Hi everyone, my name is Rhonda Robson and welcome to my Fluid Art channel. Today is another part in a series that I'm titling Do-It-Yourself 101 Acrylic Pouring Paints or Fluid Art. But anyway, in this one, in this part, what I would like to talk about is the paints that are out there, the thicknesses of the paint, and then the mediums. And I'm in the United States, so the mediums are going to be different for everyone depending on where you're at in the world. But I want to talk about how to get to a consistency that you need for a pour. So each one of these videos that I'm going to do in this part of this series is going to be specifically to a thin consistency and how do you get there and what pours do you use for thin, a medium or a medium thickness and what pours do you use for that, and then a thicker consistency and what pours do you use for that. And so I'm really going to come up with three. I know there's like all different other kinds out there, but I want to make this as simple as possible for you, especially those of you who are brand new. So today I want to get started with the first one, which is thin, and what pours go with that. Hey everyone, well, welcome to the channel. My video today is all about paint consistencies, and specifically today I want to talk about thin paints and what techniques that you use for thin paints and how you get thin paint. So let's talk about the techniques that you want to use for thin paints. The thin paints are typically utilized in Dutch pours, swipes, and pendulums. Okay, Dutch pour, swipes, and pendulums. Now, swipes I can utilize medium thickness and also thick consistency, but the pendulum swing and the Dutch pour need to really be specifically thin. So those will be the two that you're really paying attention to with thin consistencies. All right, so why I have all of this stuff here is I want to talk about mediums, keeping it simple, paints, keeping it fairly simple, and I do use a scale. As you can see, I use it quite a bit, but I use it as a guide, all right? So I'm going to move the scale out of the way for just a minute, and I want to talk about the different types of mediums that I use on a regular basis. So I'm in the United States, so if you don't get some of these products there, there are other different products that you can utilize. So the first medium I utilize is I use filtered water, and this just happens to be in a Floetrol container, but I cleaned it out and I use filtered water in here. So I fill this up and this is what I utilize. Every single pour I have water. The next medium I utilize on a regular basis is Floetrol. The thing with Floetrol that you have to be careful about is making sure that you sift it or have it go through some type of a strainer, because sometimes there's little gel-like stuff in it and you don't want that in your paint. But Floetrol is what I typically use. And then I will add GAC, Golden GAC 800 to my pours, specifically because I want to bind the paint together. And so sometimes, especially when I'm doing a pendulum, I really want to make sure I make it a fine line and it stays together and it doesn't separate. So I'll use GAC as well. Those are the three mediums I use. But I want to talk a little bit about why I use the scale as a guide, and it can't be exact because the paints that are out there are different thicknesses. So I'm going to show you on this plate how it comes out of each one of these so that you can see that there is different thicknesses. So when a artist says, I'm going to use 2 parts water to 3 parts paint, for them it may be exact depending on the paint, But sometimes I have to actually add more water or less water depending on the thickness of the paint. So let me show you, let me get these out of the way, and I'm going to show you with my paper plate here the consistencies of these, all these different products. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is Master's Touch. This just happens to be Payne's Gray. So when it comes out in a nice little fluid motion. It's thick, but it's not too thick. Okay, so that's the Master's Touch. So I'll put that there. Then this one is Liquitex Basics, and it comes out just about the same, but a slightly thicker. Just slightly, but very similar to this Master's Touch here. This happens to be Creative Inspirations, and it comes out super thick. So let me show you. So see how thick that, oh. That'll go into the bloopers. All right, hold on. Let me get that cleaned up here. Okay, so I got my blob cleaned up. I accidentally blobbed it all over this guy right here. And see, it's right there. Just hide it. All right, so this is this one right here, this Creative. Okay, so the Deco Art is also a different consistency. So let me show you that. When it comes out a little bit thinner than that, and see how it spreads and these still stay in the globs. This is thinner than these guys, okay? And then the next one I wanted to show you is this Artist Loft Flow acrylic. And it too is even thinner. And it comes out thinner as well. See how it also separates? Okay. And then this is the Artist Loft Ready Mix Pouring Paints, which has a really nice thick consistency, and you don't have to add any medium to this if you're utilizing it in your thicker pours. But if you're utilizing it in a thin one, you have to actually add stuff to it. But see how much thinner? So if I were to say the different thicknesses, the Ready Mix Pouring Paints is thinner because it's already ready at the thicker, medium to thicker consistency. The Flow would be the next thickness. Then your Deco Art, Deco Art Metallics is the next thickness. So these two are almost identical. And then this is really thick. And then you've got these two, which are kind of medium. So if I am going to create a thin 3:2 ratio of water, so if I put 3 parts paint to 2 parts water of this, it's actually not going to do well. It's going to be too thin, and the paint's going to separate it. Same thing with this, same thing with this. But then if I add it here, 3 parts paint to 2 parts water, it might be too thick. And then these would be just about right. So the reason why I bring that up is because we use the scale as a guide. But then as I'm stirring it and mixing it, I want the consistency as it's running off my stick. I'm going to demonstrate that on all 3: thin, medium consistency, and thick consistency, so that you can see that although the ratios are nice to start with, but when you pull your stick up, it's going to be a different consistency. So if you have any questions, please make sure you ask down below of what I mean by ratios are a guide. They're not exact. So when you ask me what my ratio is for a Dutch pour, I'm going to tell you 3 parts paint to 2 parts water. But if I'm using this kind of paint, it needs to be a different ratio than this kind. So that's what I am talking about. But please ask your questions down below, and I'll make sure I answer those for you. All right, well, let's get started mixing paints We're gonna mix the thin ones first, then I'll mix the mediums, and that'll be in my next video, and then the thick ones in the video after that. We are going to create thin paint, and I'm gonna do two different ones. I'm gonna use a thicker one, and then I'm gonna use a thinner one to show you that the consistency really depends on it coming off your stick. I'm going to show you what I do to start with my Dutch pours, and I am going to do a 3 parts paint to 2 parts water. And I have these see-through cups so you can see it, as well as hopefully you can see my scale, but if not, I'll tell you exactly what it says. So when you're using a scale, you can turn it on and then reset it, or just put the cup on that you're going to use and then turn it on, and that zeroes it out for you. Now if I take my cup off, it's going to show a negative, and then when I put something in it, it's going to add to it. So that's the reason why you need to zero out with the cup on there. So I say I do 3 parts paint to 2 parts water. Let's go ahead and make Payne's Gray. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it super easy and do 3 ounces to 2 ounces of water. So I'm going to go ahead and squirt this in there. Continue this up to 3. So I got 1. I'm just making this as easy as possible for you guys. And I usually do it this way. I usually do it in ounces, and I do 3 ounces of paint to 2 ounces of water. And then I'm going to add in just a little bit at a time. So this right now says 3.1. So I need to get up to 5. But I'm just going to add in just enough to get me to 4. And here's the reason why. If you don't stop and stir it in, it gets very clumpy. So you want to add your water a little bit at a time. So add about half of what you think you're going to need, or 1 ounce in this case. And let me show you the thickness of that. That's really thick, right? And so we're going to need to get that to the thin. Scrape the side so you can see it. So that is really thick, almost even thicker than my thick paint that I use for fluid art. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. And then I was at almost 4. Let's get this to 5. Or right before 5. Let's do there to 4.8. Let's go ahead and stir this. And I'll show you what the consistency is of this one. Now that's running off, and that's making a mound on the top. So this would be about the consistency of my thick, because it's making a mound on a mound on a mound, and it's staying on the surface. But we're talking thin right now, okay? So we're going to get this up to 5 now. It's 4.69. Okay, so there's 5. And remember how I said it all depends on it flowing in from the stick. And this is already, I can tell you, it's too thick for the consistency I'm looking for. So it's running off the stick nicely, but it's leaving a mound on the top. So let me come over to you and let me try to see if I can show you that. All right. It's still running off nicely, but it's making a mound on the top surface. So it's kind of hard to see that. I should have used a lighter one, but Okay, so this is what I mean by I needed to add more water. So this one was 3 to 2 right now. Okay, so let's just go ahead and add a little bit more. We'll get it to 5.3. There we go. And it's still leaving a mound on the surface. So let's take that up a little bit to 5.4. Normally I have a cup with water in it instead of this jug, and I think I'm going to do that really fast. Yeah, that had paint in it. There we go. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Still leaving a slight mound on the top. So let's take this up to 5.75. This is getting more and more like the consistency I need. Okay, it's still making just like a little bit of a V and an indent on the top. And how I determine that is I don't hold my stick up like this, even though that's nice consistency about what you would want for your pendulum. But for this, for a Dutch pour, I want it to go straight in when my stick is only an inch above. And it's not going straight in just yet. So let's take this up just a little bit more. All right, so now we're at a 1-to-1 ratio because it's 3 parts paint to 3 parts water. And that looks perfect. So this particular paint, because it's thicker, needed a 3-part paint to 3 parts water. I don't get to see you. Anyway, 3 parts paint to 3 parts water. So, but this one right here would be probably closer to that 3 to 2 or 3 parts to 1 part water. So let's go ahead and do the white one for you so that you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to see if you can see this again. I don't know. Hopefully you can, and if not, maybe I can zoom in for you. It's going straight in. Okay, so that was a nice consistency. And you can tell too, you get spray out too as well. All right, well let's go with the thinner one then, because this one would probably be even more water for that thicker one, right? All right, so let's start at 0. So it's zeroed out, but I'm gonna go ahead and pretend like it's not. So I'm gonna turn it on, 0 it out, and then let's do this one here. There we go. Let's go ahead and put 3 ounces of this in there. And what if you don't want to do 3 ounces at one time? You don't have to, right? You can just feel it. If you don't want to go by the scale, you can feel it too as well. Or you can do math and figure out what the ratio is on that. And I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible for you. So I am just doing 3 to 2, utilizing the 3 ounces of the paint. Okay, so this one was quite a bit thinner. So we're gonna start with 1 part water. So let's go ahead and get this up to 4. Okay, so it's just right at 4. I'm going to go ahead and get this stirred. And you're going to be able to start feeling it too. It's a thicker one. This is a nice, probably medium right now. Yeah, this is my medium. This is a nice consistency for my medium. So let's see, can you see that? Okay, right there. See how it's making a mound and going right into, it's not folding over top of itself too much. So that's a nice medium consistency. So for medium, if I'm just going to use water, medium consistency, I would use this 3 parts of that to 1 part water, and that would be nice right there. Okay, so we want thin. We're talking thin right now. So let's go ahead and put in 1 more part. So there's 4. Let's get it up to 4.5. So 1 to 3 parts paint to 1.5 parts water. Still a little mound on the top. It's making like a slight V. So it's in between what I do thin and medium. It makes a slight V on the very top surface of the paint. So what I mean by a V, so like when the paint's going down, it makes a slight V at the top. So it's not making a big mound of paint, but just a slight V on the top of the surface of the paint. Okay, so we need a little bit more water. So I'm thinking this is going to go straight to the 3 parts paint to 2 parts water, but let's see. Okay. I think I put just a tad bit too much water. Oh, nope, it's doing good. All right. So this is thin. Let me show you that one. 3 parts paint to 2 parts water. So that's what it looks like coming off your stick from clear up high, but right here, low. Okay. So for your thin paint, you want it to go directly into the paint. You don't want it to make any mound on the surface. And if you take it and you actually stir it around, it makes no indent on the top of the surface of the paint. Goes directly into the paint. Okay, so that's thin. Thanks for joining me, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell. And next time, we're going to be doing medium paint, which I showed you with this one, but I'm going to show you with the other ones and utilizing other mixes. So if I wanted to take this now, this is quite a bit of water in this, and I want to make a pendulum. I want to make it a little bit thicker than this, just slightly, kind of like in between that super thin. I would add a little bit of GAC and a little bit of Floetrol. So this right here just happens to be my mix of 4 parts Floetrol to 1 part GAC. And if I just add a little bit of this, so that's 5.11. Let's just put a little bit of this in here. 5.67. And then I stir that up. It becomes just slightly thicker and runs really nice off the stick. And then I know that this is going to be a good consistency. for my pendulum. Actually, I'd probably do a little thicker than that. There we go. So for my pendulum, it's just slightly thicker than for my Dutch pour. And my Dutch pours, I only use water. I don't use any Floetrol or any GAC, but I do on my pendulums and my other pours. So that would be a good pendulum one. All right. Okay, so I wanted to quick show you this thing that I do, and I don't know what you guys do or if you have any thoughts on this, but I reutilize bottles all the time. So because I'm doing these for you and I'm not going to use them today for any purposes, I want to go ahead and put them in my Pure Leaf bottles that I have. I drink tea all the time, and so these are just washed, and then I keep the lids as well so that I can do it, but I always mark it ahead of time. So this one right here happens to be Payne's Gray, so I do Master's Touch, so I do an MT, and then I do Payne's Gray, so I mark that on there, and then I do a 1-to-1 ratio. Remember, that one was 1-to-1 of water. And I also make sure that if it's specifically for a Dutch pour, I put that on here. So it's for my Dutch pours. Okay, so I've got that on there. And then I just take it and I pour it in. And sometimes I actually just spend quite a bit of time just preparing paints so that when I do go to pour, I don't have to prepare everything right then and there. So it's really kind of what you like to do. I personally like to do that just so I can just go and I can go, I want to paint. I don't want to have to worry about pouring and mixing anything. All right, so got that one. So I just want to paint, and I don't know about you, but I love just being able to not have to worry about mixing my paints. So I go ahead and do that. So now it's ready for my pour. And then this next one is more for a pendulum, so I'm going to write that on there, pendulum. And it was the Deco Art Pearl. And then it was a 3-to-2 ratio. And I'll just pour it in there too. And this one probably can be done with a Dutch pour too if I wanted to add just a little bit more water to it again, but it's pretty thin. So also, one of the things that I like to not waste paint, nor do I like to waste bottles, but I don't waste my sticks either. I put them out on a drying area, and I just reutilize my paint stirrers. And for this purposes, I wanted it to be nice and clean for you, so I didn't use those. I used new ones. So all these sticks will be dried and reutilized. If I happen to put silicone in it too, I make sure I do that. There's been a couple times I accidentally used a silicone, something that had silicone in it, and I didn't want silicone or a cell activator. So, but yeah, so these work out really great. So you might want to consider just keeping your extra bottles for just that purpose. All right, well, next video will be about medium. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for watching, and if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so that way you can get notified when I have a new video up. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.